Welcome to What Am I Modeling? Today's guest is Victoria LaFont of the LaFont Agency, and we're going to be diving into all sorts of different things. But I will tell you, this woman has a gut instinct, and I think many of us are born with a gut instinct that we want to follow when we're younger. But as we get older, we start getting influenced by outside factors. Victoria has started a podcast called Influence to Death, which I think is so fitting, especially in the health world. I see people all the time getting stuck. They're getting stuck in their health. They're getting stuck in their job. They're getting stuck in their life and they don't know what to do. So we're going to be talking about pivoting. We're going to be talking about trusting your gut instinct and letting go of skepticism that is all from the outside world on us. So it is my pleasure to introduce Victoria LaFont. Welcome, Victoria.
I am so happy to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Did you know? Now, this is a weird way to open a conversation, but I have to say it because it's so true. And she was my absolute favorite cat ever. Ever in the history of animals that I've ever owned was my cat, Victoria.
Aww.
And I used to call her Princess Victoria. And then she kind of became Tori. And she was like, have you ever had one of those animals where it's like through all the crap you go through in your life, that animal is at your side? This cat was hit in the head with a golf club and her eye flew out of the socket. And I was 18. I had moved out of home. I was like brand new, first apartment, barely getting by, working full-time job, trying to like take care of this cat. And she gets hit in the head with a golf club. And I found myself at the vet's office with no money in my pocket, trying to figure out how to save my dear Princess Victoria.
Oh my God. That basically sums up that we can just stop right there. That sums up the entire.
I know. And I did save my Princess Victoria. They worked with me on a payment plan. And that cat, from that moment all the way through when my first son was born, she lived 19 years.
Yes.
And that cat moved from Seattle to Phoenix, back to Seattle, from apartment to apartment. She went through a wedding. She went through, the birth of my first child.
Aww,
My
yeah.
Princess Victoria. So every time I see your name, I go,
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. And I'm totally a cat person. So perfect.
Yeah, don't tell Piggy. She's over here snoring. But
Oh my God, totally.
so I'm really happy to have you here. And there's something that you do that I love about you, and something that I have always leaned on in my life as well, which is probably why I'm where I'm at right now. And that is listening and trusting your gut instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are told so often how we are supposed to live, what we're supposed to do. And even when inside we're like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do it that way. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We don't always listen to ourselves, and there is so much power in our intuition. And your stories all link back to an incredible gut instinct in you. So were you like this as a kid?
No, I was like, I grew up in very well-intentioned parents, but not the best home. And I don't want to say anything negative about my mom and dad. We have a great relationship now, but for me, being like a really sensitive, empathetic person, it just was not the best environment. And so it took me a long time to be like, hang on a second, there's a different way that I can show up in the world, like not feeling, how can I say it? Like feeling like I have a voice. And then once I had that, I really had it, if you let me put it that way. Like once I started to listen to that and act on it, it was really, really strong. Maybe I did kind of come in within. That's like what helped me navigate situations as a kid. But yeah, it took me a little while to like make it show up in the world.
Were you musical as a kid?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could always sing, right? So it's good for people to know that professionally, I was a trained collegiate opera singer. That was my deal. That's
Okay,
what I
good.
wanted to do.
Come on, you got to have something.
Oh my God. I sang a little bit at a conference that we were at this year as part of the presentation I gave, and people were like, it's so loud that, yeah.
It's
So
hard
on
on
audio,
microphone.
it's not great. Maybe people Google me, maybe it's out there on the internet, but growing up, I mean, that was like what I could do. And I grew up Catholic. So it was like this like way that I could interact, with going to church and singing. And I grew up in Kentucky. I hope that it's still happening. There's this incredible state-funded arts program that high schoolers can go to. And so I got to go to that to study voice and then did it in college. But by the time I was like, I think I was second year in college, I just had this, like, it was really like in my stomach. When somatically I think about it, it's like there was this pull in my gut to just go out into the world. And so actually, I had scholarship to go to school for music, and I would sneak in these creative writing classes on the side. And I loved being in that department. Like those were the writers were totally my people. I ended up getting my major ended up being in writing because I'll tell the
Yeah.
whole story, but I dropped out of school. So
Yeah.
this writing mentor that I had, he was like, "You need to go to Eugene, Oregon," which, okay,
Okay.
yeah, there was like this some type of like exchange program. It was like a national exchange, and the University of Oregon was on that list. And he was like, "Oh, this is totally where you should be." And so I remember packing up this little Dodge Stratus that I had and driving from Western Kentucky to Eugene, Oregon. It was like this 40-hour drive. Yeah, it was, and
By
I was
yourself?
actually, what? My mom, I can't remember if she went out there with me or drove back with me at one point, but over the years, I like crossed the country multiple times. But like that was the first time I drove to Eugene and I like, pull up in this. I don't know if anybody listening has been to Eugene, Oregon. It's like
I have.
hippie central. Yeah, totally. So we lived on Alder Street, like right off 13th Street, which was like the main drag to the university. And it was exactly what I needed. I mean, he was right. So I dropped out of music school, and I remember I just like took like anthropology classes and this like clay class with this incredible potter, and it was like an arts and creativity in clay. Like I just totally embraced like what the hell am I doing with my life? I was 20 years old. I mean, I didn't know anything, but I knew like I needed to go out, right? I like felt so compelled. Um, and God, I mean, I'm like, I don't even know where to start in Eugene, but I lived in a co-op, so I was vegan,
Oh,
hardcore vegan at the time. Lived in this co-op with, I think it was like, 30 other vegan college students. So you can guess how that house was. And but it was like the best time of my life. It was that paired with going to that art school in high school. I was like, oh, I have like found my people. Like there's other weirdos out there. I'm not the only weirdo in the world, which is how it feels to be. This has not changed much in 25 years. This was
I
what was
don't know.
happening.
It's so funny. It's like weirdo, odd, whatever. Like that's who we are. Like we're always weird to somebody, even when, I grew up in a world where I was supposedly perfect. I was what
Mm,
everyone wanted to be. And I
mhm.
felt weird and odd.
Yeah,
And I didn't feel pretty. I didn't, if anything, I was more self-conscious because I was supposed to be one thing that I'm not. So
perfect.
I think
Yeah.
that takes a lot of guts at 20 years old, as a kid to pack up, go somewhere else, totally live a different lifestyle, go with the flow. And I think
Hmm.
we have that in our youth quite a bit. Like I feel like I was kind of the same way. It's like when I went off to college, I was like, bye. I was out of Seattle. I was like, see ya. Um, uh, once I got out of the vet bill, right, to get myself done. Anyway, but I think as we get older, we lose that spontaneity and we start to develop a lot of fear over change,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, I'll tell you, this is yesterday. My husband and I think we just spent $20,000. I'm not kidding, on gym equipment yesterday because we're opening a
Congratulations.
gym. Thank you. Yeah, I'm like, okay, like for me to do my job, I need like a computer, right? So, like that's my overhead. And we're opening a gym. We live in Boston right now. I'm like sitting in city center in Boston. We're moving back to Kentucky where I grew up and we're opening a gym. So that like spontaneous, like, I guess this is the next move. It has not waned much as I've gotten older. And if anything, my crazy ass husband has pushed it even more. So, but yes, I think most people, I mean, starting at the very beginning, they like do the thing, they like go to college and they get married and they have their kids and they have their career. And then it's like that path I still like from Eugene, actually, I completely quit school and went and hitchhiked around Hawaii. And I kind of haven't
Okay,
like,
wait, but you didn't hitchhike to Hawaii.
no, no, no. I mean, that would
So,
be actually, I kind of did hitchhike to Hawaii if we
okay.
really want to get in, because there
Yeah.
was this airline. You could buy these discount tickets out of Oakland, California, in the early 2000s, and you would be on standby to Kona. And so I think the ticket was like $89 or something, like something crazy out of Oakland. But you had to like stand there, and wait until there was a seat open. And that's how I got to Kona. And I hitchhiked around Hawaii. Anyway, I like had that adventurous thing. And now looking back, I still have some moments, which, it's interesting to like look back where I'm like, was that the right move? Like our downstairs neighbor, he's this like totally accomplished endocrine surgeon and teaches at Harvard. We're the same age. And I'm like, whoa, Ben has like got it going on. But like he didn't get to go do that. So yeah.
Regret and comparison. Let's talk about that for a minute, right? Like
Yeah.
regret. I I think it was my mom that kind of got the regret bug out of me because when she was dying of cancer, I said, "Do you regret anything?" And
Mm.
she said, "I regret only one thing, and that's that I worried so much about that 10 pounds I couldn't lose."
Oh my
That I would give
God,
anything to have
Trisha.
that now. And she had
Yeah, I
flipped
bet
it
that.
to a gratitude, right? It was like she was dying.
Mm-hmm.
She would have given anything to have just 1 pound more because
Mm-hmm.
her rate of survival was dependent on her muscle mass at that point.
Right, yeah.
And but it was interesting because that put such a different perspective on my life that I don't really remember prior to that what I regretted fully. It's like I almost just dropped that and was like, I can't regret. But
Mm-hmm.
we go through life and we think, gosh, we chose this major. Like I started as a psychology major and then I went to veterinary medicine and then from veterinary medicine went into people medicine. And then, it's like
Mm-hmm.
from the entertainment industry, I went to school. My scholarship for college was a theater scholarship.
Oh my God, Trisha, that's
And
totally
I
why
was
we get along.
and I was voted to be most likely to be famous in high school. I
Oh my
mean,
God.
nobody was like, "Oh, Trisha's going to become a doctor and she's going to help." Nobody said that. Everyone was like, "Trisha's going to be famous." Like,
She's gonna
yeah,
play a doctor on TV.
she's going to play a doctor on TV. Totally, right? And so when I look back and I'm like, "Gosh, should I have stayed with that track? Oh,
Yeah.
should I have joined my grandmother's, real estate company? Maybe that
Mm-hmm.
would have been easier, right?" We start to
Mm-hmm.
regret and compare with people and in the age of social media, this is getting so
Oh,
much.
it's crazy. And then to your point, this is really important where you're like, you kind of like had the like everything seemingly was just right, but you still felt odd. You still felt out. It's like that feeling is so in us. And then, yeah, like you're saying, like with social media, then you can look on a phone and be like, well, God, I bet they don't feel that way. And
Right?
it's like, well, hang on a second. Like you're right. Everybody feels that feeling. And kind of for the like, kind of like the big message, that I think is so important to get across. It's like there has to be some beat in you that you take where you're like, what am I supposed to do? Like what is my step that I'm supposed to take? Whether it might be being part of your family's real estate company. Beautiful. It might be like packing a bag and going to Oakland and trying to catch a flight to Hawaii.
Well,
you
and you
know?
don't always know. I think we have
No.
this idea that we're supposed to know. Oh, we're going to know what we're going to be, we're whatever. And I talk to people all day long that did what, let's say they were in high school and they said, I'm going to be a doctor, and they go and they become a surgeon. And then when they're a surgeon, they're like, did I really want to be a surgeon? Like everybody goes through these times. And I think it's that gut instinct. It's like certain people, the people that survive, the survivalists trust their gut instinct. And at some point, they're going to come to a head with it and they're
Mm-hmm.
going to make a choice. Am I
Mm-hmm.
going to continue to trust my gut? Am I going to push towards, or am I going to listen to everyone else and let everyone else rule my life? And I
Mm-hmm.
think socially, we're seeing a lot more of this. We're seeing a lot more push and pull from social media, from media. We're seeing a lot of people interjecting opinions when we never asked, right, for their
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
Mm-hmm. I
And
know.
we're now being pulled from all these different directions. And I personally think that's causing health decline. It's
Yeah. Oh,
causing us to develop
absolutely.
disease because
Yeah.
our nervous systems are like bing, 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 bing. We don't even know
Constantly.
what's
Yeah.
up and what's down. And you have to have a gut instinct. You have to have a gut instinct. You have to trust it. And you have to be willing to take a risk to go
Mm-hmm.
to LA and get a flight and go to Hawaii and say,
Mm-hmm.
screw it. I'm going to experience people. who did you meet? Like, did you meet just interesting people along the way? Because
Yeah,
that's one of
yeah.
my most interesting thing. Like, my favorite thing is human behavior. Put me into a crowd and let me just be in the crowd.
Watch,
Because
yeah.
I love to meet interesting and different people. I would
Yeah.
probably be a great wanderer. So as you were a wanderer, did you have certain lessons you learned and people that you met that impacted your life?
I mean, I'm still such good friends with so many people that I met from those travels. Actually, today I talked to one of my dearest friends that I met when I was 20 in Eugene. So for 22 years, we've been friends and we're still very, very close. Her boyfriend lived in the room next to me in this vegan co-op, and so we became friends. We're still, I haven't talked, he's sweet and lovely. I haven't talked to him though in years, but she and I are like still really close. Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, the people that I met influenced it, my entire life was influenced by these choices. I am where I am today because, like, okay, I dropped out. I went to Hawaii. I ended up living at this raw food commune in Hawaii for years, but it like got me interested in nutrition. I eventually got my master's degree in nutrition. It's like all of these like things happened. It really, I think, I'm bringing up the regret of the comparison because it's like people hear this story sometimes and they're like, oh, wow, it's so cool. And you did it. And it's like, yeah, but there's always that, like, would the grass be greener over here, that
Always.
and I feel great about what I've done, by the way. Like, the deepest part of me is like, yeah, like, I'm so glad that I had the cojones to be like, okay, this is scary. Like, it's scary to take a backpack and go hitchhiking. You're like, I don't know where I'm going to sleep. I've got a tent, but like, and it's like that, like part of you that gets fed from that. I feel proud of that. But even there, like, it's like, oh, I'm still like, what would that have been like? So I think just to be vulnerable about that is important. And kind of in that same vein that you're talking about on social, our nervous systems getting pulled in all these directions. One thing that I do like to see on social is there's all these accounts where people are being more like authentic,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing that more and more and more. I hope that people who may be a little bit younger women, people who like aren't as steady in their base, they're seeing that too. And they're like, okay, I'm okay. Like
Yeah.
there's also this thing where I remember like going back to Hawaii at some point, like for years, I just like ping ponged back and forth between the West Coast and Hawaii. And I went back this one final time, I had like fallen in love with my boss and just like, you're just like living this wild life. And I was like totally unsure about going back, which I should have been. And I remember this woman was like, there are flights to and from Hawaii every day. Like, it's not like you can never come back. If you go and it's not the right decision, do something else. And do you know what? More than anything in my life, that that woman, God, I cannot even remember her name. She was this incredible woman from South Africa that I met in California. That has influenced me because it's like there's some decisions you cannot get out of. There truly are. But like most of them, you might have like a small T trauma and something happens, it doesn't feel good, but like you can reverse most decisions. You like change jobs or you change where you live or you change partners or whatever. It's like things are malleable. So there's something comforting in that. It's just what is, but we don't have to feel like we're just completely, writ in stone, married to every decision that we make. There's freedom. So yeah, follow what your gut says. Maybe it's wrong. You'll do something else.
Well, and I think there's a commitment aspect to that as well. It's like you
Yes,
have to trust that gut and then you have to commit to it.
me
And then
too.
realize that it's okay. Like you're going to get something out of it, even if it's
Yes.
lost. I don't talk, actually, I don't know if I've spoken to any entrepreneurs or successful business people that didn't lose
Oh,
at one point. We
totally.
all lose. We all fall down. We all have to get back up in
It's a
life.
gamble. It's
It is a
totally a
gamble,
gamble.
and that's part of what makes life life. And it's a very boring story to write if everything goes well. No,
Yeah.
that's not going to be made into your movie if everything goes well, right? There has to be
Mhm.
some sort of growth, there has to be some sort of transformation, some sort of heartache. And I think there's also an innate drive in certain people, like people that just will take a risk and just go for it. There's a lot of people who are really afraid to do that. And I do wonder, how do we change that? How do we,
Mm,
as people who do take risks, right?
mhm.
And who do say, you know what, I'm just going to jump in.
Hmm.
I have that trait as well. And although I
Yeah.
can get scared at times and kind of back wheel, and I always come right back to it again. It always comes back to my gut no matter what, even if,
Yeah.
and I always find that when I do back away from my gut, it's because I listen to someone else rather than me, you know, in many ways. But I don't know if that can be taught. Have you, like, you work with businesses all day long, right? This is what you do. So
Hmm.
as a mentor to people, can you teach that, or is that just an ingrained personality trait?
It's a great question. God, Trisha, I don't know. I mean, the people that I'm around, they just are kind of doing it. You
Yeah.
know, it's almost like I see this a lot. People are either driven into entrepreneurship because they kind of have that, like, I want to try something, I don't fit the mold, so they kind of like are drawn to entrepreneurship, and it happens to be in wellness, and like it could have been in anything, it could have been in real estate, it could have been in whatever. And then there are people, I think, who are driven into becoming an entrepreneur because they have a mission in wellness. They don't necessarily have like it in the like business side, but they have a mission around, like, we have one client who's this brilliant microbiome researcher. It's like maybe if he had to choose, he wouldn't own his own business, but like it has to be that way, just by the fact that like he is doing what he's doing and nobody else is doing it. So I feel like maybe it looks different for different people. Like I wouldn't necessarily see like my like intense drive that I have toward like trying and gambling and what about this, and even right now I have an agency. I love it. I'm so committed to our mission, but there's like a part of me that's like, I've like actually told people this. My husband the other day, we're like planning out this gym we're building in Kentucky, and I was like, I want to build a swimming pool in the backyard, and he was like, what? Okay, like, what planet are you on? But I'm like, I can see AI is changing the shape of like the way we market and like that, and I love it. It's totally cool. But I'm also like, I have this like thing in me where I've always wanted to do. It's called Infant Swim Resource. It's like this very like do you know? Okay, so if people listening don't know, it's like the 6 month to a year old. They're like these little babies. If they do fall into water, you can basically teach them how to flip up, and so their chances of drowning is really reduced. And I love it. I'm like obsessed with this way of teaching kids how to swim. And I was like, I want to do that. And he was like, okay, well, do we need to build a whole swimming pool for you?
Yes.
Yeah, and I was like, yes, we totally do. And that's also like my business mind is like, that's going to be like an upsell in your tier of, like club members. Anyway, so it's like I have that, like, I love entrepreneurship. There is a connection to the mission that I have in my agency with that, but I see it differently in some people. They love Hashimoto's research. And
Yeah.
so that's pulling them into that from a different direction. So I guess maybe my thought is like all humans have that somewhere in them. It just might not be in a place where it's lucrative, like I work actually with an operations person for one of our clients. She's this incredible knitter. Beautiful. Maybe she could turn that into a job, but it's just there's like a fire, like a draw that we all have in some direction. It's just like some people, it's their profit, and some people it's not. But I think all of us
Maybe
have
like a
it.
self-worth, like a self, I don't know. I seem to think that we're like, oh, it's knitting, I can't make any money. Where I went, well, yes, it can.
Yeah, oh,
Like,
totally.
oh
Me
my
too.
gosh, like baby
I've
blankets.
actually talked to her about
Like
it.
$75 for a baby blanket. Like,
Or I'm like, you need to make, she makes patterns or whatever. I'm like, girl, you got to get on Instagram and TikTok and yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and maybe it's also you were talking about how you're going from, like, you're doing this agency, you're seeing AI coming in, so that obviously impacts copywriting and marketing, and
yeah.
that's a whole thing to learn. But now going into a gym and swimming. By the way, my husband was a swim instructor when my kids were
Oh,
little,
yes.
and they like hated that type of training because they wanted to
Yeah.
teach them to actually swim.
Yeah.
I see value in both, but it was interesting because that's why I knew it. I was like, oh yeah, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Because some people do it wrong. So let me tell you, if you're looking at that, go to someone who knows what they're doing, please. Um,
Yeah. It's a
but
big deal. Just by the way, that organization
huge.
is like very strict. Like
It's
they have
huge.
very strict guidelines and like, and I totally respect that. You're like having these little babies in water. It's so sweet. Oh my God.
I know, they're so cute.
It's totally
But it's
sweet.
about pivoting too,
Yeah.
and not being a victim. And,
Yeah.
we get into these points where our careers, maybe they hit a stall, or maybe we want to make a change in career. Maybe our lives have changed. Our kids have grown up. We're like, I hate working at this factory. I want to do something different. And there's a fear of taking the risk, right? We live in fear going, I don't know if I can do that. My stability's over here. I really
Mhm.
value stability. But then being able to make a pivot instead of saying, oh, wow, well, this company's going over. Now my life is over. You have to
No.
look for what is that silver lining. And I talk a lot about being optimistic. And one of the biggest pushbacks I get is you can't just fake your way and be happy through everything, Trisha. Like
Yeah.
this is realism here. Like you're just, this isn't all rainbows and butterflies and whatever. And so I want to talk about that a little bit because if you want to have joy and happiness in your life, you have to project joy and happiness. So you have to create a life that allows you to have joy and happiness. So if I'm stuck in a job that I hate,
Hmm.
right? It's in my own nature to change it and find something that brings me joyful. Even if that's something I'm doing, even if that just means I'm dancing 6 hours a night, which I do, even if that means I'm just, okay, I'm going through the grind, but I'm going to do something else that brings me joy. But I see so many people get stuck in that, woe is me. I can't make any changes. This is the job I
Hmm.
have. This is the life I have. Yeah, it's real great that she can hitchhike around Oregon, but I got this, that, or this.
Hmm.
I think it really does come to the human nature of us wanting to be victims.
Hmm. And I wonder how much you saw in practice, Trisha, like that connecting to like chronic fatigue or
100%.
burnout. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
100%. I
Yeah.
say all the time, there's four aspects to health that I look at: nutrition, movement, supplement, and mindset. I can
Hmm.
get someone a certain distance with nutrition, exercise, and supplement.
Hmm.
The ones that I have seen that truly hit that level of optimized health, they're in their 60s, they're in their 70s, they're kicking butt,
Yeah.
they're doing whatever they want, are the people that made the mindset shift.
Yep.
Until you make that mindset shift, you can only get so far. And, constantly over the years, um, I've seen people reverse disease out of
Yeah.
nowhere
Yeah.
from
Oh, it's documented. It's in the research literature.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally from just changing their mindset.
Yeah.
I watched my mom, unfortunately, cancer took her down. And, a lot of that was chemo. It was a response to chemo.
Hmm.
She died of sepsis. Her cancer was gone,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But I watched her attitude through it and the gratitude she has. And I have to say that when she went, she was peaceful,
Yeah.
right? I I think for me, I want to wake up every single day and I want to be able to say, one, I interacted with somebody that I made their day. It might just be the lady at the
Hmm.
checkout counter. She was like, "Oh, that was a sweet lady," whatever.
Totally.
And that I was comfortable with what I did. I did whatever I could do that day because you never know. You could walk
You never
downstairs like my
know.
dad, open the fridge, and die of a stroke. He
Hmm.
didn't know. He just wanted breakfast. I'm sure his
Yeah.
brain didn't go, I'm going to die of a stroke right now. He just opened the fridge. And I guess what I get passionate about, maybe you as well, just working in the health field, even in the business side, is I get so passionate about, but you can change it.
Yeah.
Like you can change it. You don't have to be in pain. You don't have to have cardiovascular disease. You don't have to be miserable. You can
Hmm.
actually change it, but
Yeah.
it requires so much self-reflection.
Yeah, and like there's a belief. I actually talked to my mentor now, and I was like, did you find that as you got more education, your belief started to lessen? Like, did you become more cynical or skeptical? And he was like, yeah, that's a thing that happens to people. Like, as you like, I'm like a big like research nerd and stats nerd, and so I'm like, well, unless it's in the research literature, blah, blah, and so things start to fall away, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's much easier to like believe in whatever crazy shit that we were doing in Hawaii. Like there's so many crazy things. Leech therapy and Shilajit, way before Shilajit was a thing, and pancreatic. I mean, we experimented with so many things, and I like was so into it. I was like, oh, this is so
Oh
cool.
my
And
God,
it's
leech therapy.
oh,
I put
totally. We did
I
a whole
put leeches
episode
on
about it.
hooks. I used to fish in summers in Lake Vermilion in Minnesota with my cousin at my grandma's property, and we would go fishing, and I didn't like touching the fish and she didn't like touching the leeches. So I would put the leech on the hook and we would throw it in and she would catch the fish and she would take the fish off. And we had
That's
this little thing. And
amazing.
this is totally a side note, but for some reason, I always caught these stupid little perch that were full of worms and
Oh
she would catch
God.
like a bass, like this huge. And I'd be like,
Huge fish.
really? Right. That's my only experience with leeches, and I have no interest in using them medically. So this has to be an interesting story.
I mean, we did hyrudotherapy. That's what it's called. So yeah, you can do it. I learned about it initially from Ayurvedic medicine. They
Uh-huh.
use leeches for certain constitutions. And then this friend group that I had, I mean, Tricia, like I said, some of these people, they're still my dear friends in this life. We did so much crazy shit, and leeches was one of them. That like belief though that I had and all of the stuff that we did, I still to this day believe that was more powerful than the actual thing. It's like, so I had a client when I practiced clinically. I was a clinical nutritionist. She had done everything. She was going to do leech therapy with me. She was like, I will do anything. She had chronic fatigue. That woman hadn't really gotten out of her house in 8 years. And previously, she had been a yoga teacher and a hiker. Her husband, we're still dear friends with her and her husband. And she ended up doing like a neural retraining
Mhm.
program, and it completely changed her life. No, she didn't have to do leeches because she did the neural retraining. She like can go hiking. She's out. She's like very, like functional, normal life. There is a way where when we really buy in, whether that's to us and our gut or to a therapy, like an external therapy or whatever, there is a power there that is so strong.
Mhm.
I like wish that I'm like very appreciative of knowing what I know and having the skill set that I have. But part of me is like, ignorance is a little bit bliss. Like, if you just can like buy in and believe something, gosh, that's powerful. And when you have that like shot of skepticism that you get from, becoming research literate or whatever, it's sort of a killjoy. Like, takes you out of
Skepticism comes
that.
from other people. It doesn't come from us. We're not born skeptic.
Yeah.
When we're a child, we put our hand towards the oven. Oh, don't do that. It'll bite, or, it'll be hot. Oh, okay. Like
Yeah.
we develop that from our interactions. And then what blows me away in health is we have people with these chronic pain conditions. They're being handed opioids. They're
Yeah.
being told there's nothing they can do. But nobody says, hey, was there anything that may be programmed in your brain that may have you reacting to pain in a different way than
Yeah.
somebody else? And when it's suggested, we're looked like the odd, weird
Oh,
person,
and
which is
it's
good for us because we're okay being odd and weird.
It makes me crazy though, because it's so established in the research literature. I mean, the main guys, right? John Kabat-Zinn, I think was his name. It's like mindfulness-based stress reduction and all these different mindfulness techniques, like looking at like reduction in pain and reduction in anxiety. And it just like, I'm not saying that you're like going to cure everything with this stuff, but like it is so powerful.
I mean, it's a good 90% of it. I 2 weeks ago, for the first time ever, was hypnotized.
Whoa, how is that?
Fun. I enjoyed it. I had this idea that I was going to go into it and they were going to like control me or something. And I was a little
Mm,
fearful of that, right? Because I was
yeah.
like, oh God, what am I going to say? Because I'm a little off the cuff. So I thought, uh-oh, what am I going to do? Are they going to have me barking like a dog or
They would
what?
have been like,
Um,
we're bringing this lady back next week.
I
We
know.
loved her.
But I was very surprised at how much I was in control of what I'd
Mhm,
said. I
mhm.
was also, what really was interesting to me as a physician and what I do was how when I was in that alpha and theta state and we were regressing back to a scene of my childhood, how the subconscious brought it forward right away. It was like, here it is.
Mhm.
But then my conscious would be like, you can't say that. Don't say that. Don't do that. Or you can't say that. And I knew to override that. So I'd override it and I'd say it. And then I
Wow,
said to the
Trisha.
lady, I said, why am I telling myself not to say this? Like, this is stupid. Like, I should say this. And there was a point, to be honest, to be really vulnerable, where I said something and I thought, and I said, oh my God, I'm a horrible person to say that. How did I
Whoa.
just say that? I shouldn't have said that. Like,
Yeah.
and I realized that I was holding in this feeling that I had in fear of not saying it because people would judge me on
You're a
that.
bad person,
I
or
would be a
yeah.
bad person or a bad mom, or how could I say that? Like, and I sat there for a minute and she was like trying to keep going. And I said, I think I need a minute to breathe and get back into a theta state because I think my conscious just pulled me right out of that like so fast.
Hmm.
And it was so interesting, but it was interesting to me because as a practitioner, you read this research, right? That you're talking about.
Hmm.
You read, you practice it, you see people get well. But
Hmm.
until you actually try to do it, or you try to do it in yourself, and I'm seemingly well, like I feel pretty darn good. I think I'm healthier
Hmm.
than I've ever been in my entire life.
That's so
And there was still so many things. I mean,
cool. Oh, yeah.
so many things I had to work through. And this obviously isn't about me. This is about you. And this is about our conversation. But just saying, I think having the willingness to be open to something like that is something
Hmm.
that our medical society is missing. And it's something that's actually killing our self worth and ourselves inside. And it's making us feel smaller and it's having us hide our
Hmm.
voice because we feel like we're going to be judged for every single thing we say or do. I put something
Hmm.
on my feed on my story today where I swore because it was a blooper, right? And one of my friends was like, "Oh my God, you didn't bleep that out?" And
Yeah.
I said, well, to be honest, if I beeped it out, they'd know what I said anyway. Like, I don't really
Yeah.
know that it's going to make a difference. They're either offended or they're
I've
not.
definitely had people like reply to our emails and be like, "Did you just say the F word in your emails?" And I'm like, if that's not okay with you, you should not be on our list. We are pretty irreverent around here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
mean,
I laughed like crazy when I saw the blooper. I thought, oh my God, I have such a potty mouth. Oh my God, how funny is that? And my social media person was like, that was beautiful. Like you
perfect.
need to
Yeah,
just
leave it.
put that out there. Yeah, you were gonna say.
I mean, Trisha, it's like ultimately, yeah, the mind is super powerful. I just think about like when you were talking, like it's one thing to read about it in the research and it's another thing to do it. When I was in school, I took a mindfulness class
Mhm.
and I was like, oh, cool, we're going to read this research about like placebo. And, I kind of like knew a little bit about it, but I was like, oh, this, can't wait to read these studies. And then we actually had to do the activities. Like we had to do a body scan and a walking meditation. And I was like, this is bullshit. Like, I remember thinking, like, I'm a graduate student, I have a full-time job, I don't have time to do this and like body scan. That like resistance, even, I mean, I'm pretty willing, it's like I have a pretty willing like capacity. It it takes something to actually experience, like actively, you're gonna experience it though, one way or the other, because the reality is like this is kind of like a different territory. We don't have much control in this life. And
Yeah.
that's kind of, I think, part of what like fuels me is we don't have much control. We're gonna die. That is something that I don't mean to contemplate, but like comes up for me where I'm like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? Like at the end of the day, we're not getting out of here. So we might as well build a swimming pool or start a gym or like whatever, the thing is that we want to do. It doesn't have to be, these are pretty like big, like flashy examples, but it's like you can take a dance class. I think that's a perfect example. Like you can take, I have a friend, I love Zumba. She will like never go with me because she's embarrassed. And I'm like, Michelle, come on. Like you don't have to worry about this. It's Zumba. Come on.
And
Like
nobody's paying attention to you. They're all worried about themselves. That's the
themselves.
other thing I
Exactly.
learned with dance is I went in there thinking, "Oh my God, and then when I looked around, everyone's looking at themselves in the mirror. And they're worried
Yes.
about what you're thinking of them. They are not watching you. If
No.
anything, if you go in there with full like reckless abandon and you just freaking go for it,
They love
they're going to
it.
cheer you on more than anything
Yes, and
else.
it's going to give other people permission to be themselves. There is a crux here of like us leading back to if you live wildly, if you live fearlessly, if you let that voice, I mean, there's a balance. You can't let that voice totally rule you. I've definitely made some decisions where I'm like, oh, maybe I should have kept
Yeah,
my
you
mouth
have to
shut.
have some realism.
Some realism, but like having an opening to listen to that voice, it does allow other people to have that also. And there is a lot of power in that, right? So I think that's a big thing. It's like if that can be taught or, if people just come in with it, I think part of it is that it's infective, right? We can share that.
It's modeling. I mean, the show is called What Am I Modeling, right?
Yes.
So if we're modeling anger,
Hmm.
blame, victim mentality. I can't. Oh, well,
Yeah.
we're modeling that. We're putting that out in the world. That attracts those
Hmm.
people. And that's been
Yeah.
well proven.
Totally.
And when you're putting out there, I can deal with this
Yeah.
obstacle. I can fall down and get back up, but I can.
Try
And
it.
it's an entirely different world. On
Yeah.
that note, you have a podcast called Influence to Death. How did that come about? Because by the way, I love the name. I
Thank you.
absolutely love the name. I want to steal it. I
Well, we
won't.
have to have you on, Trisha.
I
Yeah,
would
I
love
mean,
it. But what is it about and how did that come about? Because here we are. Okay, so let's recap.
okay.
We're a singer, right?
Yep, I
Everyone's
was an
thinking we're
opera
going to be a
singer.
singer. We decide, forget this. I'm going to
Yeah.
go to Oregon.
Went
I'm
to
going to like
Oregon.
live with a bunch of vegans. I'm
Yeah.
going to stick myself with leeches. And then I'm going to go to LA and I'm going to go to Hawaii and I'm going to just hitchhike around Hawaii and just meet random people.
Yeah.
And
Then California. So then I moved back
then
and I lived in Northern California and I started my practice. I went through training and then I
in
went through
nutrition,
school
right?
and yeah, I started nutrition. I didn't know though that like not everybody loved writing their own blog. I just thought like everybody loved that and loved marketing. Like that was the part. I loved my clients and I loved having the business, but like those two things together, like being a clinician, it was just not my thing. So like I would go on the radio and write articles and have my website and I loved the marketing. So eventually I was just like, okay, hang on. I'm like, niching
Hmm.
down into doing that. But there was never like a part of me that felt, how can I say this? Like how that came about. It just didn't feel like there's something missing. We would actually lose clients in the agency because I would get pissed and be like, hey, the marketing that we're creating for you, it doesn't feel integral to me. My partner and I both have this very strong, evidence-based background. This is true. This is on our website, our origin story. I was flying, my husband and I split our time now between Boston and Kentucky. I was flying from Boston down to Kentucky and I had a layover in Maryland. And I remember, like, I don't know, you should never eat oysters at an airport.
You should
That's,
never eat oysters in general.
oh no. Oh my God. We're, we're in Boston. I mean, we're like huge raw oyster people. But I like had them at this airport and I was like, well, I'm in Baltimore, whatever. I like was sitting at this airport bar eating oysters. And I remember like I had this situation with a few clients where we'd gotten fired. I mean, it was like not great. We're great copywriters, but there was this mismatch between us wanting to create evidence-based copy and
Mhm.
content. And I'm not saying people were like, like intentionally ignoring the research literature, whatever. It just was not a good match. And I remember sitting there and I was like, oh my God, that's the mission of our agency. Like, we are evidence based. And if that is not what you're about, we are not a good match. It's like, even now, when I help coach people into like niche, or like figuring out their avatar or whatever it is in their business, I'm like, what it might be is the thing that pisses you off. It might not be the thing that you dealt with in your health or the population. It might be the thing that is like eating at you that needs to come
Right.
into the world. So for me, that was the case. And once that happened and we started to look through that lens with our agency, I looked around and I was like, there are people being influenced to death. That is where that name came from. Again, I'm like, I err a lot on the side of being charitable. For me personally, that's really, really important. I'm going to always assume that people are doing their best 100% of the time. If not, I'm like, I'm going to jump out my window. I mean, I would just be so down all the time. But I also saw in the industry that we're in, it's $1 trillion industry. Wellness is. People need to understand that that's a business, right?
Yeah.
There are beautiful people in that business, but there are people who maybe they're making decisions more for money than they are for wellness because
Mhm.
it's a industry. So when we looked around and we were like, okay, what do we want to talk about? It was like the thing that we sort of couldn't say as an agency,
Mhm.
like we're going to like talk about these topics. So we're still even in the podcast, we're pretty careful. I want to say we're very careful. We're pretty careful. We're not like naming names. There's only like a
Yeah.
couple instances in podcasts where we've been like, this particular outfit is just
Mhm.
so bad, like people have died or like that.
Yeah.
But usually we cover topics. So like we're talking about like the carnivore diet or keto or leeches. We talked about leech therapy or we talked about melatonin. We talk
Yeah.
about like trendy topics. And then we try to do it with humor because like, why not try it and make it fun? You
I
know?
mean, my husband, is having some issues physically with his body and pain and things like that. And he's been like going from physician to physician. I mean, because it
Mhm.
can't be the wife. It's not going to be the wife.
Oh,
So
it
it's not
can't.
happening. So,
No, you'd like to stay
so,
married.
but it was, yeah, right, exactly. So he came home the other day because he went to his primary care. And the primary care historically has always been the one that writes the referral to see the neurologist or to see the rheumatologist or whatever. And he needed an MRI of his back. And I said, you just ask your primary care. You're going in there anywhere to get lab work. Ask him to take care of it. And he goes, oh, well, you can just go to the neurologist and he'll do the imaging. And I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing? So, what is exactly the role of the primary care physician now, right? Because now,
Yeah.
when you call up and you say, I'm sick, they say, go to urgent care. When you
Yeah.
call up and you say, I have back pain, they say, oh, well, call the rheumatologist. They'll do the imaging or go
Mm.
self order it. Like, what is
Mhm.
the role anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, when you're talking about all these topics, it's like, it's good to be real, is my point, because this is what people are experiencing every day. He waited weeks months to get
Mhm.
in with his primary care,
Yeah.
get these that came in with a request saying,
Mhm.
this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I need. And everyone say, well, Tricia, why don't you just write the thing for the extra? Sure, I can, but
Mhm.
then I'm the
Mhm.
wife.
Mhm.
Just a reminder. And I will write it because I was floored. I was like, how do you go there? They get paid.
I know. I
About this being
know.
a business from the insurance company, they get paid all this money to spend 5 minutes to not even. I said, well, what'd you get out of it? He goes, nothing. I got stuck in the arm.
Yeah.
And I said, well, why didn't they do the labs first? Are you going to go in and talk about the labs? Nope, they'll just call me. And they don't
Yeah.
even have script. And we need to start talking about stuff like this. We need to start talking about integrity and
Mhm.
showing up and doing something that you love. And we
Yeah.
don't. There's a lot of just sadness out there. And I know all of us get so fired up about it. And we are influenced because those dollars that are paying for the primary care are going towards telling people what they need, and they don't even know who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I mean, God, we don't talk much about conventional medicine just because it's not
Yeah.
those aren't my brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? In my mind, I think about conventional medicine like an electrician. This is seriously the analogy that goes through my head to keep me sane. You build a house, you need a general contractor, you need a roofer, a plumber, a drywall guy, you need a flooring guy, you need interior. There's like all these people that you need. The electrician though has to pull the wire. It's like that is who's gonna like wire your house. That's a doctor. That's how I see that. They have this like very specific lane. They're great at that, but like the problem is that in our culture we say the only person that you need to build your house is the electrician. And it's like, okay, well, hang on a second. We know that like all these
Yeah.
other parts are really important to like put the house together. So that's kind of like how I like that's like my analogy for conventional medicine. In our podcast specifically, we're talking about like our field. We're talking about
Yeah.
functional because it's what we do. And I've actually gotten some criticism that I think is worthwhile where people are like, you're kind of hard on your field. You're hard on functional medicine or on holistic medicine. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, fair enough. And be hard on me because the reality is that people are spending 5 minutes and a $25 copay and who knows how much they're reporting to insurance for that GP appointment, maybe getting a referral, maybe not. We're
And
very
getting a
like
piece of electrical tape rather than a new wire.
totally, totally. They're just like bandaging, yeah, like putting like band-aid over a bullet wound
And you have to go to Home Depot and buy the tape yourself. They're not
yourself.
even going to provide it, right? They're just going to tell you
Totally.
where the hole is and be like, run to Home Depot and get that wire and just tie it around. It'll be fine. See you
Yeah,
next
like
year.
good luck. And so then people come over into functional,
Mhm.
which is super, super important that we're there. But like if all that's coming over to us, we better be good. That's how I
Oh,
think. I'm like, we need to like really serve these people, right? So, and I know I'm like preaching to the choir, right? It's like that's
no,
what you
but I
do.
think it's
But
important because people listening are feeling the effects of what my husband did, where they're like, well, we
yes,
don't even know who to go to. We don't even know if we can trust functional medicine at this point. We don't even know if we should put the money, pay out of pocket, something that we have to save up for to take care of our health. We
yes,
don't. there's such a lack of trust. And
Yeah.
I think the reason we have lack of trust is because people aren't being transparent, and then they're not being authentic, and they're not, and we're not trusting our gut, right?
Hmm.
So we know the answer has to be over here, but everyone else is saying, well, that's just bogus or this and that. And so having podcasts such as yours that speak the truth and are so
We're trying.
authentic,
I hope
where,
it comes through.
yeah,
We're totally trying.
where
I mean,
you can be honest
our
and funny and
format,
laugh about things too, is
yeah, oh,
it's
that has to
huge.
be a part of it. It's like, first of all, nobody wants to listen to two, like, stuck up bees, talk about like how they know everything and nobody else does. That's not the goal of it. It's like our format is we go through the research literature and we actually, like, part of what we do is we say, like, here's our bias. By the way, just to be totally transparent, here's where we're coming from. We are not perfect. We don't know everything. We're just two ladies. You know what I mean? It's like, I sure as shit don't know everything. I'm not a specialist in anything except liking research. That's it. And marketing.
Yes.
So it's like we go through that and people actually kind of get upset. Like, and I'm like, you have a bias too. People are so used to not hearing about their influencer's bias that they think they're hearing from a balanced source when the reality is just nobody talks about it. And then you hear about the product or the strategy or the, intervention that this person is talking about, and maybe it's perfect for you, but maybe it's just that person's preference. So our goal is to be like, here's the full gamut. Like, we're about to do an episode on gluten and we're pulling all these studies, and it's like most people do great, totally great. Whole food, barley and wheat and all, it's a beautiful food. I mean, you can get really deep into like did we evolve to eat grain? But that's a whole other question. But like, but my bias, I'm celiac.
Yeah, right.
you know? So I think it's important, it's like we also have said, like, hey, if our episodes kind of rile you up a little, like, good. That is actually what this is for.
Yeah, and it does go back to, like, when I was talking about hypnosis, like a lot of those things that are in my subconscious are from my bias. They were how I were raised. They were how I
Yeah.
shaped the world. And to have someone else believe exactly what I believe because I was shaped in one way, that's stupid. Of course not. We were
Yeah.
raised in different ways with different environments, different genetics, different everything. Yet as a people, as a community, we're losing all these connections with people that aren't exactly like us.
Yeah. Oh,
And
it's
it
a
breaks my
bummer.
heart
Yeah.
because wandering around Hawaii, meeting random people from different ethnicities, from different cultures, with different upbringings,
Hmm.
with different
Hmm.
viewpoints on the world, and sitting there and listening.
Yeah.
I'm being like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't agree with that, but that's interesting. Like, I find that interesting.
Yeah.
And I think, um, kind of to tie it up, it's like people are looking for happiness, right? They want to feel good. They want to feel joyful in a
Hmm.
world where we're telling everyone that they're crap.
Yeah.
So if we did go back took an example from you and said, you know what? I'm going to abandon it. I'm just going to go. I'm going to follow my heart. I'm going to follow my gut. I'm going to meet people along the way. I'm going to treat
Mhm.
them with love and gratitude and acceptance, regardless of what their viewpoints are. And I'm going to take their viewpoints into my brain as something interesting to learn. Whether or not it changes my thought doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to meet the next person. And some of the education that I learned from this person might actually get passed on to that person in conversation, and then onward and onward. And in the end, we have a community.
Yeah,
We
and
have a
I think
community
also
that lifts each
allowing
other
that
up again.
in yourself also. It's like we don't let ourselves change either, or like, we have to be part of that integration too. But
Mhm.
yes, absolutely, to create community. I mean, Trisha, God, that's so important right
That's
now.
so important.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to have you part of my community.
No, same. Yeah, absolutely. Totally. This thing that you're doing, this part of your channel, it is really worthwhile. I love it. So, yeah, I'm very honored to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. So as
Yeah.
we wrap up, what advice? I mean, we have so many different aspects of what you've been through. I don't know if the vice is the same from the opera singer to the podcast host or whatnot, but if someone listening out there is just saying, I'm afraid to make change, I feel stuck, I
Mhm.
am not happy, I'm stuck on where I'm at, what advice can you lend them as a friend?
God, just do like a small thing. You know, it's interesting. Like today, actually, right before this, I like didn't have time to work out today. I'm dealing with all this tax crap and blah, 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 blah. But I was like, you know what? I have 10 minutes. I can do like 10 squats, like the smallest amount of thing. It doesn't have to be big. The little voice inside of you that's like, hey, what about this thing? I think sometimes we interpret that as like we've got to like totally renovate. And it's like, no, no, no. You can just like do one small thing differently. You can
You
like
can just
do,
straighten the towel in the bathroom or change it to a prettier one rather than remodeling the whole bathroom. You can put a
yes.
candle in there or
Or like,
something.
you know what? I had this whole thing with earrings for years. Like, I love big earrings. They take like, 3 seconds to put in and take out. I like, it's so weird, but like, I won't let myself just do that one little change. It's just so, we're so funny in that way. It's like you can change your life in these like very, very tiny steps. Yeah, it does not have to be a big deal. So I think that that would be the main, like message that I would pass on. You don't have to hitchhike around Hawaii. You don't have to, it does not have to be big and flashy. It can be very, very small and let that voice that's in you live a little bit and it can just be a little.
I love it.
Aw,
I love it. I love it.
good.
Thank you so much for
Yeah,
spending
thank
time with me.
you. You're very, very welcome.
I so love it. And where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm at thelafontagency.com. And then our podcast is Influence to Death. And we love getting feedback and topic ideas. Like people email us the most amazing topic ideas that we are doing episodes on. So let us know.
I love it. And I
Thank
would
you.
love to be a guest. I'm going to hold you to it.
Yes. Oh, totally. I'm like, ooh, what topic can we cover? We'll talk about it.
Oh boy, pick from the hat. I'm an open book, but that's good. All right. Thank you so much, sweetheart. You have a
Yeah.
fantastic rest of your day.
You too, Tricia.